Hey everybody, Andrew here. It is Wednesday, November 9th, a little bit later in the evening like usual because I got a day job and I do these things after work. Uh, for the folk in the USA, happy midterm elections. Just taking a look at some of the things going on, and definitely the red wave did not happen. Uh, Anything aside, it looks like for the most part, it's my opinion, it's a decently run election. It will be nice, and this is just my opinion, if the Republicans do capture the House and Senate, even if by a very small margin, that will provide some counterbalance for the executive, which seats a Democratic president. Uh, Big congratulations to Ron DeSantis out in Florida. What's really interesting, and I think this is quite telling, that there's a lot of these articles coming out, especially if it's the Guardian from Britain and the Washington Post, even Rolling Stones coming out with some things. Some of the Democratic media is having fun that it looks like Donald Trump's having a bit of a hissy fit. He's warning party rival DeSantis not to run for president in 2024. Looks like Trump might be coming out with an announcement that he's going to run for president. We don't know at this point, but I saw a date of November 15th. However, the poor showing in the midterm elections might get the Republican Party to rethink my opinion that if Donald Trump does run for president in 2024, it's going to be outright disaster. I think the red wave that turned into like a red little trickle, tiny drop of water was more of a vote of possibly that even the independents who might be swayed towards Republican just didn't do it this time. Uh, Even as I talk to people, I'm in the west coast of Canada, which tends to be a bit more liberal. So people still have this sense of Trump derangement syndrome, and what really gets people turned off is when Trump feels like he's getting upstaged and has to punch down even on people on his own team. So I think this is disaster for him. If he were to run for president in 2024, I like a lot of us are just tired of the name calling. We could feel for the guy when he had the Democrats all over him during the time that he was in office, and then the time he got out of office. I really fault the Democrats for not having a very good platform on which to operate. It's just attack after attack after attack on Trump. And it seems that the more that Trump hangs around, the more they get to attack him, and the more that Democrats get to curry favor with the populace. So I think that has to stop. Trump keeps beating on his own rivals, especially for somebody who's as strong as DeSantis. And DeSantis is, in my opinion, he's held his own and he's stood up to quite a bit of the bickering that the you know passionate left seems to do. So he does it in a way that doesn't feel like it's petty or bombastic in any way. Like, just DeSantis just calls it as it is, and people like, yeah, yeah, that was fair. I can respect that. But Trump seems to just want to keep uh, burying in this hatchet for anything that doesn't go his way. So that's American politics. Switching course, we have in Ukraine. There's a lot of talk about Kherson and the Russian front line that was established in Kherson after they crossed the river, and didn't go very well. So the thinking here is that the one of the new chiefs, generals in Russia, decided that, hey, let's go for it. Let's move in the troops and give it a good push, and just realize that to do logistical operations across the river, I think this is a fault of the Russian army, is their logistics. Okay, so if we go back to the early days of the war, yeah, there was when they started the special military operation, a few days into it, we saw some images like there's this long column of material that was coming in that was just sitting there. And people like, oh my God, it's like their whole column of material on this road way out in the open. Like, why can't we get some airstrikes or some missiles on that? That would have put huge dents into it. It just, they just didn't seem to have the organization on the front line. This is a little bit to be expected, especially since the Russian military is not a power projection military, it's more of a defensive military. The United States has much more skill in deploying and getting into the front lines and delivering material. It's they've had a because the USA has to go overseas in order to fight, so they need to. And you have to think of Iraq, for instance, is while I don't condone what happened in Iraq, I think it was kind of tragedy to have so much loss of life for the inconvenient little truce that they were telling that didn't pan out. But it still shows the capability of the US military to deploy over long distances. However, the resolve of the enemy they're fighting is not as strong as someone like Russia, who does have great resolve in the operations that they're undergoing right now. However, there's certain operations that come with significant risk. So one of the thoughts is that they're probing, and what you do with probing is moving your military units into a particular area and seeing that can we actually hold this area, or is the enemy defense enough that it's overwhelming. Thing that you have to consider in this war is Russia doesn't want to play a shock and awe game. They're not in it to, like the USA would do, is just blow apart a whole swath of area and move in. You have to think that Kherson is in what Russia would consider as Russian territory now, and that the people of Kherson are primarily Russian people. So they don't want to go in and obliterate the place, because that's the homes of the people that they're really trying to protect. So they're still playing a delicate game with the special military operation. The other thing they don't want to have happen is to build up war weariness. War weariness happens is when the body bags start coming back with the sons and nowadays the daughters of the parents, and as the society starts to see more and more of those body bags come in, it's like, what are we doing? Why are we wasting the lives of our children to fight this war? And that can bring into question. So there's that part of it is, if the push gets to the point where the loss of life is really high, then it can have backlash. But also is they can't afford to lose that amount of manpower. Yes, they are bringing in the 300 to 320,000 new troops. They're going through training and most likely will be deployed when the battle lines freeze over. We're getting closer to the dead of winter out in that area, and in the winter time, the mud changes to frozen land, and that may help the logistical operations. Russians do have a decent enough capability of fighting in the wintertime. They're quite used to it. It's a Nordic country, it's northern. And we can then see how well the Ukrainian military deals in this type of environment. So the biggest thing is the Russians don't want to lose an extraordinary amount of manpower. The way that they're playing the battle right now, or the special military operation, is to grind down the Ukrainians and, or I would say more the Zelensky regime. They're not trying to, you know, in the best case, they don't want to be destroying Ukrainians because they are basically brothers and sisters of Russia. Um, as far as from the Russian psyche, so we have to understand that. So they want the Ukrainians to overcommit, and it's possible in the Kherson instance that they got a chance to test the capabilities of the Ukrainian military, and the Ukrainians put on a very good fight out in Kherson, and actually was inflicting losses on the Russians to more than what the Russians really wanted. So they did a withdrawal. They're going to pull back their lines, reassess, and most likely we'll see another probing attack when a lot of the battlefield freezes over and the mobility actually increases. So we're going to take a look at that. Again, they're trying to grind down Ukrainians, get it so that, even we have to see what happens in the midterm elections in the USA. It's possible that if the Republicans take the House, that they could reduce funding to the Ukrainian war efforts, and that might help uh, Russia on the other side um, make gains. Because again, the Ukrainian government administration just doesn't have the money to support themselves. They're in a massive deficit position, so they rely on money coming in from Europe and the USA to fund their administration and keep their government up and running. If that funding gets cut off, and basically everything collapses, and we could see a quick unfurling of this war towards the Russian favor. Overall, peace would be nice. I highly doubt that the land gains that the Russians made are going to be given up very easily. That's just not. You have to. The way you have to look at this is the gains of the four territories plus Crimea is not going to be reversed. The Russians are putting that into their constitutional framework, and they're finishing up the legalities of that. It just means that it's basically Russian territory. It's just a matter of how vigorously are they going to defend those areas, and to what means are they going to use. So again, it's potentially a game of chicken escalation, seeing if the Russians are going to escalate to a degree that's going to warrant the US or the collective West in the European Union included to up their game. So again, tit for tat escalation is still occurring. I would like to see some sort of peaceful resolution to this so we can get some stability in that region and stop this World War III scenario. Again, that's kind of what we're waiting for. The miracle would be that if the two houses in the USA turn Republican and the Republicans decide not to follow the warmongering Bush era neocon way of thinking and looked at how can we start to bring the appropriate parties to a negotiation table and start to come up with a plan to bring stability back into that region again. Okay. I'm just going to stop it there. Say thank you very much for your attention, and we'll see what happens in these US midterm elections. So have a good one.